All right. Yes, we are talking about glass bottom OSINT, and we are going to be doing a phishing kit analysis and case study. Who am I? I'm Alex Slotnick. Background in desktop support, security operations center, incident response, and I'm a lover of all things open source intelligence. That said, I am a threat intelligence analyst in the corporate sector. My team actually had a first and second place finish. That the first is missing on my slide. With my team, Dwayne, the SOC Johnson, and Tracelabs Global Search Party CTF, and I'm the case tracking and statistics lead with the National Child Protection Task Force. And I'll kick it over to Haley and let her introduce herself.
All right. Hey, everyone. I'm Haley. I am still at DarkTower as an intelligence team lead. I'm a senior at the University of Alabama at Birmingham, and I will be completing my degree in criminal justice, including coursework in digital forensics and human rights this semester. My current projects include my undergraduate thesis, which is a content analysis of hate speech on Twitter. Next slide, please. Here is the overview of our presentation for today. Alex and I are going to give you a brief introduction to phishing and phishing kits. We'll tell you how to identify and extract phishing kits, how to analyze them in order to obtain pivot points, and then how to use open source intelligence to enrich the data of your phishing investigation. So next slide, please. First off, what is a phishing kit? If you have seen a phishing site, you know that a phishing site will impersonate a brand with the goal of gathering credentials from the users of that brand. A phishing kit is simply put just a easy way for threat actors with no HTML coding skill or web design skill to conduct a phishing attack. Threat actors can just purchase these on illicit sites and edit a couple things and upload them to a compromised website in order to impersonate a brand. And so this is very attractive to low-level threat actors who may not have the skills to conduct their own campaigns. Next slide, please. So the first step in identifying a phishing kit is to identify a live phishing site. This is a method that I use, and it's the method I have the most success with. It is not the only method, but it is mine. So I use the site urlscan.io. This is essentially a phishing repository where people who come across a site and believe it may be phishing, but maybe aren't sure, will upload it, and URLscan will analyze the site, kind of determine the likelihood whether it's phishing or not, and then keep it in the repository. So for this case study, we chose Office 365, the Microsoft product, and we're looking for phishing sites that are impersonating that brand. And so our search query is over here on the right. It says not page domain Microsoft.office. And so what that is saying is it's saying, do not show me the authentic Microsoft Office site, but do show me anything in the URL that says Microsoft or Office 365. And so some of our results on this repository are shown in a screenshot below that. Next slide, please. Here's an example of a live phishing site that we identified. This is actually the site that we end up conducting our case study with. One of the challenges that we faced doing this case study is the lifespan of a phishing site is not very long. Phishing sites will last usually about a couple of hours. If it's older than a day, it's likely already dead. But this site was active at the time we conducted the study. It is probably not active right now, though. Next slide, please. So one method for retrieving a kit is the method of looking for an open directory in a compromised site's URL. We call this tree walking, as we're just removing parts of the URL, the paths, until we locate an open directory. And so if you are able to find an open directory, it will look like this on the right side, where you can see private_best 1337.zip. That .zip file is our phishing kit. And so you can download this simply by clicking on it, but I will say that you want to do this in a secure environment. Do not do this on a computer that you don't have secured. I will use a virtual machine when doing this process. You know, OPSEC practices. The reason for this, though, is because not only are threat actors trying to scam you, they're trying to scam each other. And so if they have a kit out in the wild, it's very likely that they may infect that kit intentionally with malware to obtain data from someone else who may potentially be trying to obtain the same kit. So be careful there. Next slide, please.
Oops.
Now that we have the kit downloaded, I'm going to show you one of the ways that we can use the files within that kit to identify similar or other iterations of the same kit. And so kits will contain image and HTML files that impersonate the brand that they are mimicking. And so you can use these files and their file names within repositories such as URL scan to identify other iterations of that kit. So for this case study, we use the file background.svg, which can be found under the folders listed below. Next slide. Taking background.svg and using the query file name, background.svg, and page.url 365, we're able to see a wide number of instances of potentially the same kit being used. If you look at our search results, you can see that the path in most of these is the same path that we saw on the live phishing site that we showed earlier, if you'll recall from the tree walking slide. And so again, that's not a concrete lead, but it does point to a potential indication of potentially the same kit being used by separate actors here. So next slide, please. And now this is the easier way to do that same thing without actually downloading the kit. You can, so this is our phishing URL from earlier. When you look at it in URL scan, you can go to the HTTP tab and it'll show that that file background.svg was, you know, there's HTTP traffic there. And so that's from where the image file is loaded into the web page. URL scan has the capability to use that as a search parameter simply by clicking on it. And so what that does is it'll load other websites with that same file in it that have been submitted to the repository. One potential use for this is if you're looking for a live fish and you've come across several dead ones, you could use the same technique to identify potentially a live iteration of the dead campaign that you're looking at. All right, next slide, please. So another manual kit analysis tip, in order to obtain more information about the threat actor who uploaded the kit that you're looking at, you can look through the PHP files. One that proves consistently useful is mail.php. One of the functionalities of phishing kits is that this file can be edited by whoever purchases the kit as a way to make sure that the information submit into that phishing page gets sent to them. And so threat actors should edit this, but in some cases they neglect to. And in that case, maybe the original kit creator's email address may still be in there. But this is one pivot point that you can easily identify by downloading a phishing kit and just looking at the PHP file in Notepad or something. With that, I'm going to kick it over to Alex, and he will walk you guys on how to use open source intelligence to pivot off of these points.
All right. Spoilers. Thank you, Haley. Fantastic. So the question is, now what? We have a bunch of information. Some of it may be useful for pivoting within open source intelligence investigations. Let's see. Let's get into some trouble. We're gonna follow crumbs here, and we really identify as we conduct the case study three distinct groups who are operating this. Now, as we said, I have a likely, at points we do see that the users of the kit forget to change the email. So one of these may be the actual author of the phishing kit. I have a guess to whom after conducting the investigation, but I'm going to see what you guys think. So those groups are private tools at Yandex. Group B would be youngnumbers@gmail.com, and Group C is Omar Shifu 1337. We're going to walk through each of them. So the very first one is private tools. So an initial search for private tools on Google does return some possibilities. There were actually about 2 to 3 YouTube channels that are operating under this moniker. It's a bit generic, but one of them in particular seemed interesting, which was Private Tools Demo. As you can see in the video list, the videos seem to be consistent with the tactics, techniques, and procedure of our fish kit. Contained within the files of the fish kit were some antibots, and we see antibot is basically protection against being analyzed. So we see 2 videos about antibot accounts. And we also see an auto logo grab Office 365 video, which would have to do with a Office 365 phish. So what we can say is this seems consistent with somebody who would be doing phishing on Office 365. Great. This is this seems possible. We also have a hackerish profile picture indicating possibly we're on the right track. Let's keep digging. So one of the things that I like to do, whenever I'm analyzing a profile, I always click into all the tabs, especially any about page. I want to see their videos, their playlists. So I did click into all these. They were basically empty except for the about page. In the about page, Private Tools listed a website, which was fudfreshtools.com. Now, this website is no longer active, but it gives us somewhere to go. So the page is down, but all is not lost. The site Who is Domain Tools allows for historic screenshots of sites. Another option would be archive.org, which is an open source effort to archive the internet. We would be able to see possibly, if it's been scraped, a historic screenshot. In this case, Who has Domain Tools provided us the screenshot. And you can see here, this website appears to be consistent with what we would expect. We have an ICQ number and a Skype address, admin@FudFreshTools, and we see we have an Office 365 True Login 2020. And if you look at the screenshot, it appears like this is a phishing page and looks pretty similar to the one that we were looking at. So first thing I wanted to do was look at that ICQ number. We get a different domain, fudfreshtools.ru, probably the same site hosted on a different TLD. So it's another place for us to look. And then I decided I'm going to search on the FudFresh Tools angle because it seems a little bit interesting. We have that YouTube channel. And so searching on Google returns some interesting results on Telegram. We have 2 names that pop up when we are looking for FudFresh Tools, Aman Ahmad and a Mr. Whitson. Now, we can say that the top three results are likely correlated to the same actor because, hey, they all feature the same profile picture. In addition, they all feature the FUD Fresh part of the moniker. So we're going to go on that angle because it seems relatively compelling. They have a Guy Fawkes mask, a popular hacker symbol, especially maybe somebody who is not that into hacking might like to use the Guy Fawkes mask. So we're gonna go on that angle. So I look at his Telegram, and we do find some evidence that he offers Office 365 phishing pages. And we see some things that are similar. We see the auto email grab option, we see anti-bots options. So this seems consistent, is what we can say. We know that our threat actor is we would expect a threat actor who's using these kits, as we said, to be a little bit low level skill level. So my guess is Private Tools is the author of the kit versus being one of the operators, and that somebody who's putting it out forgot to change the email, or he's also operating his own kit in the wild. So looking at if we go back to our Telegram, we see a different domain listed though, fudbulktools.com. And looking at that site, we do see that that one is still active. And we see that he's selling spam tools, and another spam is another slang term for fish if you're not familiar. And we see that he's selling all the things that would be consistent with somebody who is selling a fish kit. We also get some additional ICQ, Telegram, and Skype contacts. From there, I'm going to move on to the YungPablo. We have some good information on Private Tools. We have some guesses about maybe his relation to the kit. So now we want to start looking at a couple other people who are operating the kit. So the Young Numbers email at gmail.com, I'm going to search that in EPOS. If you're not familiar with EPOS, it is a tool that allows, without notifying the email holder, it allows you to check some information about the count. It will tell you some connected accounts, and it will give you Google ID and display name and the last time the account was updated. Some really handy information. Also, if you look at that maps link, if you were to pop that into our URL, that would actually, if they've left Google reviews connected to the account, that would actually give you the Google reviews. It's very, very handy. I use EPOS a lot. We see that this actor uses the moniker YungPablo. That is the name they set on the account when they set it up. Just like you would set up your name. If I were to set up a Gmail right now, I would probably put in Alex Slotnick. They put in this YungPablo name, which says to us it's a name that they are operating under. So searching only for YungPablo does prove a little bit challenging because YungPablo turns out to be a Nigerian recording artist. And while there's some possibility our phishing threat actor is this Nigerian recording artist, we don't really have enough information to say that conclusively, and it's not an assumption we want to start with. We want to let the data kind of lead us. So let's add a helpful keyword to our search, like spamming, a slang term for phishing. So when we search YungPablo plus spamming, we actually get a YungPablo who posted in a Facebook group called Anonymous Coal Hacker. So when I go look at the profile that posted, it seems to be consistent with the activity we're looking for. We see that he's commented on a post about hiding your username on Facebook, giving you a blank username, and he says, seriously, he's very excited about that. That's a pretty low-level technical skill kind of thing to be excited about. Seems consistent with somebody who might be operating a fish kit. Let's dig a little bit deeper. Okay, so we didn't return any other profiles on Google when we searched. So the reason for this has to do with if you think about how social media companies operate. They don't want to be scraped. It hurts their business for them to be scraped. So they're pretty aggressive about blocking scraping attempts from some search engines. So one of the ways that we can get around this is to actually search within the social media platform itself. A search on Google didn't really return us very much for YungPablo, but a search on Facebook itself returned a different YungPablo profile with a matching region to the other profile, Lagos, Nigeria, and activity consistent with our threat actors TTPs. We see, if you see in the post, the screenshot, YungPablo posted in Hacker's Secret Forum, if you have a Facebook account and you want to sell, please DM me. So he's attempting to buy Facebook accounts. That kind of activity seems consistent with somebody who would be, accomplishing a phishing campaign. Now let's look at Omar. Omar Shifu 1337. We throw him into EPOS, and he's using the moniker Big Pig. That's going to prove pretty challenging to search. That's a very generic username. I do find a Pinterest associated with it, but it's basically empty. He has no followers. I think he had like 1 or 2 pins of things that were not very interesting. So this information didn't really help us a whole lot. Didn't give us any additional pivot points. Didn't really give us much information to go off of. So one of the interesting things that did turn up in the search, though, was a DNS record for a site called elabada.store. So Omar Shifu shows up on the SOA record. So that is the start of authority record. A website, whenever they start up, they must have an SOA record sent to DNS. It's basically providing who the admin contact is. A thing to note is this doesn't really have to be valid information, but it has to be there. So Omar Shifu shows up on the SOA record, which is pretty interesting. And as I look, I find that I find several other DNS records where he showed up on, and that really makes me start to wonder, how many sites can I find where Omar Shifu was on the SOA record? But it's a little bit time consuming, right? Searching onesie twosies, that might take us a long time. I wonder if there is an easier way. Spoilers, there is. SecurityTrails.com. SecurityTrails provides us not only, we can go to SecurityTrails and we can, throw in a domain and we can find who is on the SOA record. But not only can we do that, we can actually do a reverse SOA search, meaning we search by the email and see what domains that email has been on the SOA record on. So in total, I find about 131 sites in which the email Omar Shifu 1337 shows up on the SOA record. So now we can actually plug those into VirusTotal. On VirusTotal, you can take a bulk list like this and turn it into an IOC collection, which allows you to then see what vendors have flagged each of these sites as being malicious or phishing. And about 14% of the sites had already explicitly been tagged as phishing. A thing to note about that is just because a site isn't phishing right now doesn't mean that eventually it wouldn't become phishing. The threat actor could have parked the site in a hopes to use it later in a campaign. It also means that, just because a site isn't flagged by a vendor as being malicious, doesn't mean that it isn't. And also the vice versa is true. We'd really have to dig into these results to see how many of them are valid, and that would kind of give us an indication. What we do know conclusively is that the email is being operated under an active in the wild phishing campaign. We did find Omar in one of our live fish, so we know that he is for sure doing the bad. What do you do now? I think that's going to be the big question. If you're in the private sector, you can build history. And you can build internal searches based on the data that we found. So you found monikers, you found email addresses. There might be some connected IP information. That all can be utilized in internal searches. And then your internal searches can then feed additional open source intelligence searches. So that's a huge part of this is you're going to go, on the corporate side of things, we're going to be going back and forth between our internal systems and OSINT and using each of them to feed each other. On the law enforcement side, subpoenas can be submitted if it's a campaign that is relevant enough to actually warrant that kind of action. Subpoenas can be submitted to Google or Facebook for subscriber data, or even companies like Pinterest. A thing that I've noticed is a threat actor may have fantastic operational security on certain sites, but then they, these kind of superfluous sites like Pinterest that they might be using on the side, they kind of forget about it and don't really think about those OPSEC practices quite as importantly. So there, a lot of times these secondary, tertiary accounts can actually provide us some really interesting pivot points from subscriber data. The other thing, in both cases, what we really, as I mentioned, we want to be creating history. And by history, I mean we want to have records of the campaigns we've investigated, the exfil emails we found operating in kits important to our brand or our investigations. And this is because if, 6 months down the line, we see Omar or Private Tools or YungPablo again, we'll know that we've seen them previously, and we'll have some previous monikers and some contact information that they've been operating under. And that allows us to more quickly identify this campaign as associated with them, but also it allows us to pivot more quickly because we'll have that bulk information. And I mean, this can be anything from a robust threat intelligence platform where you store all of this data to, hey, a giant spreadsheet of doom. That if that spreadsheet of doom is powerful, I'm never going to say no to the spreadsheet. It works for it's a tried and true method for a reason. Can be a little bit difficult to search through at times, but very, very, very important. With that said, I am going to leave you with some additional resources. Our slide deck will be made available to you all. These are some great places to find phishing repositories, and in addition to some OSINT tools that I really like. A shout out to what'smyname.app. That is one of my absolute favorites. I didn't get much use of it out of in this particular investigation, but I will say that is a very handy one to have in your back pocket. With that said, I'll just say thank you. Thank you so much, Sans, for having us. Thank you all for listening. I am Alex Slotnick. I'll be in the hallway if you have any questions. And I'll kick it back over to you, Nico.